Hello, friends, and welcome back to Seshcast. My name is Goldilocks. This is Seshcast, a cannabis podcast for cannabis sessions. And yeah, thank you for joining me today. If this is your first time, welcome. If this is your not first time, if this is not your first time, welcome back. This is simply a podcast where I sit around and get stoned and talk for a little while about some topic that I come up with to talk about, and we just see where we end up at the end of it. So, yeah, let me talk quickly here about what I am smoking on today. I have this is Gorilla Glue number 4, which is, I love it. I'm tearing through it. Man, it's not going to last me nearly as long as I wanted it to. I've already gone through about half of what I had, unfortunately. It's delicious, super effective. Obviously, I'm already struggling, and we're going to talk about the struggle here in a minute, too. But this is, I am smoking through this beautiful piece. This is hands down one of my favorite pipes that I own. It's from Jefferson Glass Company, and it is beautiful. The picture is going to be up on my Instagram. As always, you can find me Seshcast, just one word. It's beautiful. It's a double blown, a little bit of a corkscrew to the neck. The color work in it is just insane. It's got these cool little octopus tentacles on the front of it. I love everything about this bowl. I love it so much. So the picture of this will be up on my Instagram. Again, Seshcast, easy to find. Super excited. I love this piece. I love this weed. I don't know. This is good. I'm going to go ahead and just hit it, though. So if you're smoking, great. If you're not smoking, that's okay, too. But whatever it is you're doing, I hope that you're enjoying it. And I hope that you will enjoy this along with me. Cheers. I think my mic is turned up a little hot. I'll turn that down a little bit. So speaking of my mic and of the struggle, I had two very important things break instance before I was about to sit down and record this episode. The headphone jack on my microphone broke, which sucks, but I don't have time to wait for a new one, so I'm recording this. It didn't, the headphone jack didn't completely crap out, the left channel crapped out. So I currently have one earbud in my right ear with my good recording over-ear headphones over both of my ears, so that at least the noise cancellation is kind of similar, but I can only hear out of my right ear. It's awful. I hate everything about this. I'm pretty upset, honestly. And then the other thing was that my phone charger broke, and my phone was about to die, and I used my phone as an episode timer. So that was a major bummer as well. So I had to go find another phone charger somewhere around the house, and I've got this weird one-ear situation going on. But I've got a good weed, I've got great glass, and I don't know. That's what I got, and I figured I might as well just go with it, again, because I have no other time to record this episode before it comes out tomorrow. So, but thank you for stopping by. Let me talk a little bit less about my problems and a little bit more about things that matter to you. We made it, fam. Seshcast is on Spotify, which is super cool. Very, very excited about that. That happened, Saturday or Sunday, I think, of this last week. So that was very exciting. So I'm now available in so many places, and I'm going to try and read them all off. Oh gosh, here we go. So you got iTunes, that's a big one, I suppose. Spotify now. SoundCloud, still active. YouTube, up and going. My quote-unquote Websyn, my Libsyn hosted website, that's seshcast.libsyn.com, which I believe is the link that I'm putting in my Instagram profile right now. And then all of the other podcasty app type things, whatever it is you may use to listen to podcasts, I'm probably on there. if I'm not on there, hit a brother up, let me know, and I will try and get on whatever it is you like to use as quickly as possible. Goals for this week: Stitcher, iHeart, and something else that I had said on my Instagram live earlier, and I don't remember what it was. Oh boy. Stitcher, iHeart. Tune in, perhaps. I don't remember what the other one I said was. I said it on Instagram Live. I wrote it down, and then I took the paper back up to my desk. So, yeah, I'm going to try and get in more places this week is what I'm saying. And then hopefully by next episode, I will have an updated list of all the places that I be. But that's the update. As always, follow me, subscribe to me, do whatever it is you prefer to do somewhere if you care to. Instagram, always great. YouTube would be cool. Trying to gain some subs on YouTube, because if I get enough subscribers on YouTube, I can make a custom URL, and I can be youtube.com/seshcast as opposed to being hey, search me on YouTube and I'll pop up baby. And I don't really want to be that way anymore. So, not that it's a high priority, not that listening to a podcast on YouTube is always the most practical, but if that's the kind of thing you're into, help a brother out. And, don't bother so much with SoundCloud if you don't want to. I'll keep it updated, but it's only going to have 4 episodes because Lord knows I'm too broke to pay for another host. So, I'll keep about 4 episodes at a time on SoundCloud and just try and keep that alive. And feel free to drop me an iTunes thing, review or what have you. Whatever you feel. My buddy Steve from Baked and Awake and Eli from the Not So Crazy podcast of Blizzard the Wizard and Eli, which is a really hard title to remember all the time. But they both hit me up on there, so thank you guys. Much appreciated. But yeah, that's just, I think, about it for show updates. Might as well just go ahead and jump in to the show. So I'm super excited about today's episode. This is sort of the sequel, the follow-up, the remix, the remaster. I don't know. It's the remaster. Remaster is pretty good. I feel good about that. I'm talking about albums today, if you can tell from the title. So I did music, I believe, back in episode 3, and I really love talking about music. I've always really loved talking about music, and I could talk about music for hours and hours and hours. So I decided today that I wanted to talk specifically about albums, and I am very excited to do so. And I think that I'm going to go ahead and hop in on another quick hit of this, and then I will come back and talk more about albums. So cheers to whatever it is you're doing. Yeah. Seriously, please go take a peep at this pipe over on Instagram, if that's not where you came from. This thing's so beautiful. This is from a really small glass artist. Jefferson Glass Co. is not big, but the work that they do is so gorgeous, so gorgeous, and it's kind of weird looking. I'm not gonna lie. It has kind of a strange look to it. It's got this interesting little base, but it stands really nicely on a table. The colors are all very pastel, but they just meld really well together. It's double blown, which I'm a huge fan of, and almost all of their glass has this weird extended carb on it. The carb sort of sits out on its own. It makes it a piece of the pipe. Typically there's a pipe, you've got the bowl, you've got the neck, and that's kind of all you're looking at. Maybe if it's got some accoutrements or some accents of some sort, that's like a piece of your pipe as well. But this pipe is really cool because it's got the neck, it's got the bowl, it's got the base, it's got all these little tentacles, and then it also has the carb as its own separate and colored piece. I don't know, I just think it's really cool. It's hands down one of my favorite pieces that I own, and I own a lot of glass. So check this out on my Instagram, please, and go love them. They deserve all of the love scroll on their feed, I'll be sure to tag them and just like love all their things because their things are so beautiful and I love them. So albums, let's talk about that. That's what I'm here to talk about. Um, I found out kind of recently that I had spent my whole life listening to music the wrong way. Ever since I was a little kid, I have been like a singles kind of guy. Like, I'll listen to singles that I hear, or um, if I hear a song on the radio, like I would always download that song on iTunes and then just play that one, and or songs that I heard from different places. And so like it was cool because I ended up finding some really like deep cuts because I wasn't just pulling singles off the radio or anything like that. So like I found some really like offset kind of stuff, but what I never got to listen to was full albums. Or I'm sorry, I could have listened to them whenever I wanted to. I just never really took the time and put in the effort to listen to full albums or go front to back on full albums or anything like that. And boy, if I could go back in time and fix that mistake, would I? Because man, um, I started listening to albums front to back kind of recently in life, and it's just such a different experience if you listen to the album that one of your favorite songs is off of. It changes the way you hear the song because it changes the perspective of what's around it. And this, some people might listen to this and be like, "Oh, this is really hipster. It's just music. This is music." No, trust me on this one. Like, this might be a little bit of the weed talking, but as someone who has loved music his whole life, I'm telling you that if you sit back and listen to an album front to back, if it's an album that has one of your favorite songs on it or a couple of your favorite songs on it, it will change how much you like both of those songs. I promise. It's really cool. It's really awesome. It's so interesting, the concept of albums, not concept albums. That's another thing. I'll talk about that in a little bit, but like the concept of albums, because it's not an artist just saying like, "Oh, this is a song that I'm proud of and I want this song to be heard." It's an artist saying like, I have these 12 songs, these 15, these 14, these 18, these 8, these whatever songs. I have these songs and I like all of them and I want you to hear all of them, but like you have to be well, and okay, so full disclosure, I've never made an album, but like, oh, okay. You know what? That's a lie. That's a lie. I made an album once. I made an EP with a band. That's different thing. So I guess I have made an album. So let me even take back that full disclosure. What I was trying to say there is that you have to be so like, oh gosh, there's a word for this. There's a word for this, and I'm too high to remember it. Deliberate. I mean, deliberate works, but it's not what I want to say. You have to be so intentional. I guess deliberate or intentional both kind of work, but you have to like. There's so much that goes into an album. You've got the order that the songs go in. You've got the way that the different songs are mastered and faded from one song to the other. You've got the amount of blank space you put between songs. Then you've got the cover art and the inserts and what comes with the album and all of these things. And like, I had no idea how important all that stuff was. And maybe you listening to this, maybe you have no idea how important that stuff is either. So please let me try to feebly explain to you how cool some of this stuff is. So, there are so many albums that are iconic for a million different reasons, and they may be albums that people only know like one or two songs off of, but the album is iconic, and there are so many great hidden gems inside of those albums, whether that album is iconic for one song or iconic because of the cover art or iconic because it came with some special thing for buying the album. Whatever it is, like, there's so many albums out there that 80% of the content of the actual album has gone completely unnoticed. And that is a crime. And that was a crime that I committed. That was a crime that I committed for like so much of my life. So much of my life. I remember when I was younger and people would be like, "Oh, have you listened to the rest of the album?" Like, I would say no. I'd be open and honest about the fact that I kind of preferred just listening to singles. and I like can't totally believe, like I'm angry at myself for that because I missed out on so so much so much amazing music. And as someone who loves music as much as I do, looking back and be like, do you realize you could have heard that song for the first time so many years ago? Or do you realize you could have heard that song when it came out, like that was available to you and you didn't take that opportunity? Like, man, I get so up on myself for this. And one of my big goals in life is to beat up on myself less. I spent all of childhood and most of my life, period, just being super hard on myself. And so I try to beat up on myself a little bit less. That being said, I'm always going to slap myself around for not listening to albums the whole way through earlier because boy, was I missing out so much. Just so much. And I feel like I'm going to endlessly just walk on this loop of saying that I beat up on myself for not listening to albums because I missed out on a lot unless I break this cycle somehow. So I'm going to break this cycle with another little hit of this bowl. So cheers, friends. Okay, so albums. I want to talk specifically about a couple albums that I've been super into lately, and then a couple albums that I've just listened through for the first time and I now super love. Um, so the first one I want to talk about is actually I played it on my Instagram live stream earlier. Um, so if you don't follow me on Instagram, or if Instagram isn't your thing, or if you just don't care, that's fine too. Let me fill you in on what you might be missing. I do these little Instagram lives before I sit down and record an episode, usually just like an hour or so before. Not really a lot of warning. Like I just pop on because I have to smoke a bowl before I start an episode. And so I just do that on Instagram live, and it's usually just like a picture or a candle or one of my cool like designer lights or something like that. And it just kind of like warms me up for talking, and helps me interact with people a little bit. But on today's Instagram live, I was playing this first album, and that's Pink Floyd's Dark Side of the Moon, which was the first album that I ever intentionally listened to front to back, to listen to the album and not to listen to individual songs. Because weirdly enough, the first album that I can remember like listening the whole way through nonstop is Weird Al's Bad Hair Day album, but that's beside the point. No, Dark Side was the first album that I ever sat down and listened to, and that was I should tell this story. All right, I'm gonna tell this story. So in college, because I went to kind of not kind of a very small, very liberal, private liberal arts college. Because I'm one of those millennials. I got to take this class called like American pop music or history of pop music or something like that. And it was the best class that I have ever taken in my entire life. Like this class was phenomenal. We learned so much. I learned so much about the way that music built upon itself and how you got from what pop music was in one decade to what pop music was in another decade, and finding traces of the 1920s in 1990s hip hop, and then relating music from the 70s to metal today. Like incredible class, crazy class, whatever. Teacher super cool, best teacher ever. Unrelated. So one day we've been talking about prog rock and sort of like 70s for a little while, and he says, well, we spent almost a whole day talking about Pink Floyd, and kind of Pink Floyd and Led Zeppelin together because I think those bands are just sort of lumped. So that sort of era and that sort of style of music, if me spouting genres and stuff is just jargon to you, think Pink Floyd, think Led Zeppelin. That's what we were talking about. So he tells us on Monday that on Friday we're going to have a listening party of Pink Floyd's Dark Side of the Moon. That's going to be the whole class. We're going to come in, we're going to sit down, he's going to set up a surround sound system, and we're going to listen to a vinyl pressing of Dark Side. And me and I had a bunch of good friends in that class. We were all like, wow, that sounds really cool. We're super excited for that. And so he tells us on Monday, he's like, we're having this party. That's all we're doing. So bring whatever you want, like do whatever you want to enjoy yourself at a listening party. And one of the guys that I was with was like, that sounded kind of like permission. That sounded just a little bit like permission to come to class high. I mean, it's Pink Floyd. It's Dark Side of the Moon. And we all just kind of laughed about it. Yeah, whatever. Like, yeah, maybe. So we have this class Monday, Wednesday, Friday. So on Wednesday rolls around. And he goes, all right, guys, it's the end of class. Like, all right, everybody remember, next class on Friday, we're having a Dark Side of the Moon listening party. Do or bring whatever you want to really enjoy this experience. And then he looks back at me and my group of like 3 friends and goes, just remember, this particular room is a no smoking environment. And all of our minds just simultaneously exploded. Like, what? That was a thing that he just told us to do. He told us to get high and come to class. He looked at us. There was eye contact. He didn't say it, but he told us to do it. So now we got to do it. So we all get together after class. We scheme up this whole plan. Like, yeah, of course, absolutely, we're going to do this. We're all going to meet at one of the guys' apartments. We're going to cook breakfast because we had this class like 9:15 in the morning. So we're going to meet at 7:30. We're going to have a huge wake and bake sesh. It's going to be great. Let's do it. It's going to be great. So I wake up that morning, like 7 a.m., go up to my buddy's apartment. We all just like hang out, start cooking food, get ready. I think we like smoked a bowl and then started cooking and then smoked another bowl and ate. Like, we were super high. We were so high. And in this whole process, like 2 other people just kind of randomly joined our group. So one of the roommates of the guy whose apartment we were cooking at was like, I want to join in on this wake and bake breakfast party. It sounds great. And so he was with us. And then another kid who was just crashing on the couch because he was in town for the weekend, doesn't even go to the same school or live in the same town, joins in on our little breakfast wake and bake party, and they come to class with us. So here we are, 3 dudes rolling into class on campus, stoned out of our minds. It's 9:15 in the morning. Oh, I'm sorry. It's 9:20 because we rolled in 5 minutes late. We've all got sunglasses on. Walk in, teacher is waiting for us. Looks up at all of us, gives us a nod. We all give him a yo, and roll onto our seats. So 3 of us plus 2 other dudes who aren't even in this class, 1 kid who doesn't even go to this college, are stoned in the back of the class, and he puts on Dark Side of the Moon. And man, that is a quintessential moment of my life. Like, that is a freeze frame that I will never, ever in my life forget. I think honestly, that experience might be one of the happiest moments of my life because it's so simple. Like, sitting there with friends in college, I had an amazing college experience. I went to a great college. I loved this class. I loved this professor. This was just a really happy day for me. It's early. My stomach is full of greasy breakfast food. I'm high. We're ready to go. And it was just such an amazing moment. And I kicked my feet back and I knew Pink Floyd. I knew Dark Side of the Moon. I knew Money. I knew Time. I knew Brain Damage. I knew this and Us and Them, excuse me. I knew the big hits off of that album, but I never sat back and listened to the whole thing. And it was the first time that I ever heard Great Gig in the Sky, which if you don't know that song by Pink Floyd, listen to it. But you've got to listen to the song before it. Just listen to them both. And if you're going to listen to that much, you might as well listen to the first couple songs because they're all short. Just listen to the album. Listen to Dark Side of the Moon. And when Great Gig in the Sky hits, you'll know how important it is to listen to a whole album, or at least I did. I'm sorry. Let me hop off the weed high horse for a second. All people are the same, man. All our brains are connected. If I feel this way, you'll feel this. Whatever. Like, let me come back for a minute. That's how I felt, and it was just like, wow, that was so cool. And it was the first moment that I realized how important it was to listen to an album the whole way through. But I'd had a little whisper of that idea earlier. Like I'd had another experience, and I'm gonna take another hit of this real quick, and I'm gonna pull up. I don't like. There's no plan for this show. I don't take notes, but I knew that I was gonna talk about albums today, and so straight up, I just like wrote a monster list of albums just because. So I'm gonna pull that up real quick, and then I'm gonna take another hit of this. And then I'm gonna talk about this other experience that I had. So sorry, I'm good weed, good topic, good podcast. Cheers. There's a pretty healthy cherry. Oh gosh, there's a pretty healthy cherry on that one. So I had to hit it twice. So, luckily I'm looking at the album that I'm about to talk about. But Smash by The Offspring. So, I have been to a bunch of concerts in my life. But one of the first concerts that I got to go to that I got to go to because I wanted to go to it. Like, I got the tickets. I was super jazzed about it. Like, it was the Vandals, Pennywise, The Offspring, and Bad Religion on what I think was the American Vandalism tour. And like, man, that show was sweet. That was, let me put into perspective. That was like 2012 or 2013. That was not a long time ago. These bands were not in their prime. No one on that band had been touring for less than 20 years. Like, it was Pennywise's 20th year tour or something like that. So I might have been a little deeper into college. It might have been like 13 or 14. I don't totally remember. So the cool thing about this concert, the Offspring headlined. I think I said that out of order earlier, but the Offspring headlined, and they played Smash front to back. Now, Smash was an album that I only knew 4 or 5 songs off of. But The Offspring is one of those bands, like, you don't know their songs, but if somebody plays it, you know all the words, and you're like, wow, what do you know? I know the words to that song. And straight up, because it's The Offspring, like, I think that might be a white people thing, but everybody has those musical artists. Every single person. You have a musical artist, I promise, I know, I guarantee you, that, like, you've heard 50 of their songs, but you only know 3 of them, but then somebody plays one of those songs and you know every word, and you're like, well, I guess I know that one. Like, you just pick up on things, you don't realize it's the same artist, you don't learn the title, yada, 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 whatever. Smash. Offspring. I had only heard a couple songs off this album, and I knew I liked it. I knew I liked The Offspring, but it was the first time they had ever played Smash front to back live in the United States, and I got to be there, and I'm mad because I didn't realize how big a deal that was. Like, I didn't know how cool that was. I've seen The Offspring since then, and like, people have talked about wanting to be at that show, and I was at that show, and it didn't really mean that much to me because I didn't care about albums. And if I could go back and just smack the crap out of myself for that sentiment, I would do it because I'm angry. But it was so cool. You know, everybody talked about it. Obviously, I remember it, but I don't remember it the way I could. I don't remember it the way that I could remember it if I hadn't, if I had known then what I know about albums now and how important albums are now. And I just wish that I could go back. Like, I do. I really, really do. So I'm going to hit this in honor of that, I think. Cheers. So, uh, this whole album thing totally works in the other direction too. There have been plenty of bands that I didn't know that I liked. Maybe sometimes bands that I thought I didn't like. And I took the time to listen to their albums, and I gained a whole new respect for them, and it just changed everything about them. And I love them now. And one of them, I have to give a very special shout out. He gave me a iTunes comment, so I said something about this earlier, but Eli from the Not So Crazy podcast of Blizzard the Wizard and Eli, the other day was chatting with me and a couple other guys from the this little group that we're in, and he mentioned that he had listened to my music podcast and then listened to OAR's live album, and it just like changed. He was like, it was great. Like I appreciated it so much more. It was like I was there. And so I was like, man, that's really cool. Like I'm super glad. And he said OAR was one of his favorite bands, but I've never been a huge OAR fan. At least I didn't think that I was, because the only song of theirs that I knew was Shattered. The like, how many times can I break when I'm shattered song? I think that's the lyrics. Which like I liked. I didn't have a problem with, but it just wasn't really my thing. Wasn't my type of music. So I was like, OAR is not a band for me. But Eli said that to me, and I was like, yeah, well, maybe I should just listen to the album. And so the other day, listened to, and I don't know if this was the live album that he was talking about, but their live at Madison Square Garden album, front to back, and I love OAR. I didn't even know. They're really great. I like them a lot. They're kind of like Dave Matthews Band. Like, I love OAR now, which is super cool. And that's happened to me with so many bands. Like, so many bands. That happened to me with Rusted Root. If you're a Netflix fan and you've watched Big Mouth and the Burnout Stoner Dad is talking about the Rusted Root cover band, I watched that and realized that I'd never actually listened to Rusted Root outside of Send Me On My Way. So I went back and listened to that album. I have that one on my list. Let me find the name of that. When I Woke by Rusted Root. That's an awesome album. Listen, it's real weird. It's very different, but it's cool. I like it. I dig it. Alan Parsons' project, Tales of Mystery and Imagination, is another one. That whole album is based on Edgar Allan Poe, and it's so good. Just listening to the whole album was one of those, like, I didn't even know I liked this band, and now I like this band. And it's been great. So great. And then there are bands that are some of your favorite bands, but you listen to one of their whole albums for the first time, and you're like, this is just as amazing as I thought it was going to be. Temple of the Dog's self-titled album, Down on the Upside from Soundgarden, Follow the Leader from Korn. Sorry, that one's kind of out there. If you're not into metal, I apologize. But Korn is one of my favorite bands, and as is Amon Amarth, another metal band, but Jomsviking, phenomenal album. It's just like, there's so much that you can learn about a band's sound from the albums, and there's songs that you never hear. Like, this is why deep cuts exist. If you've ever heard the phrase deep cut and you're like, what's a deep cut? Deep cut is one of those songs off an album that people haven't heard. Like, that doesn't get a lot of play, that wasn't a single, wasn't a radio single, yada, yada, yada. Like, it's deep in the record books. Maybe it's super old. Maybe it's off a very seldomly heard album. Whatever. Deep cut. And deep cuts are the best. Like, you find such good ones. So yeah, I don't know, albums. I got rambly about it. I listed a bunch. I'm gonna put my brain on pause and take another hit, and then come back and talk about something else that I'm really excited with about this particular show. So cheers. So, I have the fortune of working at a job where when I come in the morning, I get basically an hour to myself to put on headphones and just do some mindless work, which is something that I love. I just really, really love. Uh, I get to come in and just clean for an hour in the morning, which is something that I just really, really appreciate. Um, and I just throw on headphones and just kind of veg out. Um, and so I've been on this mission, not just for 2018. I started a little before the new year, but almost kind of as a New Year's resolution to every morning in this hour, I'm going to listen to a new album. Um, and that's what I've been doing. And it's been so good and so much fun, and I've loved it. There have been some that I've loved and adored and listened to many times afterwards, and there are some that I've listened to and I've been like, you know what, that wasn't for me, but it's cool that that band did that. Like, I've just learned so much about different music that I've never heard, uh, because of not listening to albums. So, what I would like to invite you to do is to go on this little journey with me. Anytime you find yourself with a spare hour to listen to music, just maybe, listen to an album. And I know a lot of people are into podcasts. I hope you're into podcasts if you're listening to my podcast. I listen to a lot of podcasts. But you and I both know there are times you want to listen to a podcast and there are times you want to listen to music. Like, it's different things for different strokes for different folks. So the next time you have an hour and you want to listen to music, try listening to an album. I would love it if you told me what that album was. Because I switched to Libsyn, I have show notes now, which is cool and I like. And you can find that specifically at my Libsyn profile website page thingy that I tag in my Instagram. It's in my Instagram bio. And I'm going to put a list in my show notes this week of all of the albums that I can think of that I've listened to front to back recently. And it's not a huge list. It's not super impressive. Like I said, I just started on this little album journey. I started appreciating albums a couple years ago, and I started listening intentionally to albums 4 months ago. So cut me some slack. But I'm trying to go back and hit all the albums that I missed, and I'm trying to listen to the ones that are the good ones, the super important ones. Or the offshoot ones, the ones that you love, whatever. Tell me about them, please. I'm going to post in my show notes all of the albums that I've listened to, and then my request to you is somehow tell me the albums that you have listened to that have meant a lot to you. So this post will be on my Instagram forever. Fill up those Instagram comments, YouTube comments, emails, whatever. I don't care. I'm pretty sure that I can edit my show notes after I post them. If I can, I'm going to keep this list up to date. Maybe eventually I'll post a list somewhere. I don't know. But I want to know your albums. I want to hear what you like and just tell me. Talk to me. Yeah. I would love to know because I always want to listen to new music, and now I want to listen to new albums. And if you have never experienced that, if you have never intentionally listened to a whole album and appreciated the order that the songs go in, I said I was going to talk about concept albums. Holy crap, the podcast is almost over. So concept albums are the albums that tell a story. Not necessarily, it's kind of a broad definition, but concept albums are basically albums, full albums with a purpose. Albums that exist for a reason, usually to tell some sort of overarching narrative. Tommy by The Who is, I think, the most famous concept album that I can really think of. I'm sure other people will hit me with arguments. I have a day's page of notes about concept albums from that class I was talking about earlier, but I think the most popular one that I can think of is Tommy by The Who, and I say that just because people know Pinball Wizard. And if you explain to somebody that Pinball Wizard is about a guy named Tommy, and there's a whole rock opera about Tommy, that should tell the story there. But Dark Side of the Moon, kind of a concept album, whatever. So I don't even remember how I started talking about concept albums this time. I love concept albums. I've liked concept albums for a long time. That's one of the other albums that I used to listen to front to back. Like Green Day's 21st Century Breakdown was great. I really liked it, but there were a couple songs that I would skip around on because there were some that I liked more than others. And that was after like Green Day had the whole Uno Dos Tres disaster, and those albums were not good. See, I can talk about music forever, and there are albums that I know, but even those albums that I just listed off, I've never listened to the whole way through. And I'm trying to go back and hit all of those and do all of the like the I'm trying to go back and get all the ones I missed. Good, bad, ugly. I just want to hear them. I want to have that piece of history or like that piece of music back into my experience because I feel like I miss so much. I feel like I miss so much. I don't know. I'm almost out of time. I've got a lot of weed left in this bowl. I'm going to try and torch this thing really hard, which might end up in like a couple seconds of you listening to me cough. And if it does, I'm sorry. And I hope you like the music because that was one of the other things I meant to talk about. That whole like reggae dub pack that I got for my music last week. I said that I hope you enjoy the music as much as I do. And then afterwards, I ended up hating the music. I hate that dub pack. I don't know if I'm going to use it this week. I might have to buy a new one. But like, I don't know, maybe you liked it. If you liked it, great. I didn't personally like it. But I hope that you like the music because I'm going to take a huge hit right now. So, cheers. Oh, here we go, kids. Oh boy. Okay. Oh man, all is not well in my world. Wow. Sorry if you're more into this podcast for the podcast and not for the cannabis. I totally understand. I get it. I level with you. And I thank you. I appreciate you being here. I really do. So me talking really hard about weed and taking big hits is not your jam. Thanks for tolerating it. Honestly, if weed is your jam, I torched. It was a huge hit. Sometimes that I wish I like Instagram. I don't know how I would showcase what I do on a podcast. Whatever. It's a big hit. Appreciate me for not coughing myself to death. At least a little, please. Or don't. I don't care. Whatever, man. I want to go back to talking about music because music is way more fun than talking about me coughing. So, but unfortunately, I don't have more time to talk about music. But I'm sure there will be more music podcasts. Maybe someday there will be a Seshcast music where I'll just talk about music, because that would be pretty rad. And I really dig music, and I could talk about it for a long time. So, thank you. If you have albums for me, please tell me. If you don't have albums for me, go find some albums for you. It does the body good. And thanks again for listening to Seshcast and taking this little journey with me. Much appreciated. If you know somebody else who might be in for this journey as well, feel free to let them know. We'll grow the community a little bit, and we're all just talking to each other, I suppose. So, yep, I'm going to take one more on cheers on out of here. So one more. Yeah, cheers. Oh, oh man. Oh, it was so bad. There it is. I'm down. Oh god. Man down. Oh. My name is Goldilocks. This has been Seshcast. Oh man, thank you so much for listening.